Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? Good. We're in the home stretch. What a great day. So first off, Bex, 10 years. Congratulations. Woo! This is my first time, and I've really enjoyed spending last night and today with you. And I'm really excited now to spend the next hour sharing part of my story. I have to start by acknowledging that it's not an easy time to be a leader. Duh. Kind of speaking the obvious. There's so much change, so much complexity, so many unknowns. We're living through geopolitical turbulence, tariff wars, economic uncertainty, which then, of course, creates anxiety around well-being and mental health for us as leaders and the people that we are leading. There's adapting to advances in technology like AI that some of us struggle with. And on top of that, we all wear many different hats. Some of them are formal leadership roles, and I think leadership is a verb, it's not a noun. And then we're maybe looking after aging parents and thinking about the legacy of their lives, and we're helping out with our kids' sport teams and trying to help these kids lead themselves to a better future. And so through all of this, I just wanted to start and share today that leadership is dynamic, and I'm going to share my points of view from all those different hats. And I hope that wherever you are on your own personal journey, something really resonates. Right now, the leadership title that I'm wearing is Vice President of the Canadian Olympic Committee. And even though our Olympic teams perform unbelievably well every single Olympics, it's remarkable, they're doing so out of a system that's really facing a major crisis. There's a safe sport crisis across a number of different sports, including hockey and soccer, some of our powerhouses. The sport federations are so underfunded. They have not had a funding increase since 2007. Can you imagine trying to deliver on today's demands with 2007 budgets? Last month, I was summoned to testify before a commission struck by the government to look at the future of sport in Canada. It's really heavy. But on the positive side, because there always is, even in the darkest times, it's forced us at the Canadian Olympic Committee to consider what could the sport system look like if we completely reimagined it? Because maybe that's where we're at. What would happen if we took a much bigger leadership role? We'd have a lot of extra added value that we could bring to the sports system. But if that's the case, how do we show up as leaders through this time? How do we need to lead through these times of change? And that's what I'd like to focus my presentation on this afternoon. So on one hand, it's a really kind of exciting time to live through. We don't know what's going to happen. Elbows are up. We're unifying. Who would have imagined that the major opposition to the United States president wouldn't be the other party in the US, but it would be Canada, right? So, I mean, really exciting. But on the other hand, it's completely terrifying. Who knows what things are going to look like a week, a month, a year from now? And I think that's really what I'm talking about when I say embrace contradictions. These two ideas, exciting and terrifying, are polar opposites, and yet they're both true. And somehow as leaders, if we can lean into that and see that this extreme and everything in between is possible, then we will find our way through. But not if we're boxed into one way of thinking. We have to be open to do things differently. It's a balancing act between these extremes. When to take bold risks and when to be prudent, when to move forward and when to pause, when to consult and when to provide clear direction, when to hunker down with the team you've got, and when to make some major changes. And as that pendulum swings, it requires us as leaders to embrace contradictions, to stay open to the possibility of one of those extremes or anything in between. We may have to move forward in ways we once said we never would, but based on the situation we find ourselves in and the information that we're given, we do. The only thing we don't contradict are our values. So easier said than done. To do this requires agility. It's the ability to adapt to situations and people around us, and as good leaders, to bring out the best in that situation or the people that we're leading. And to do that requires empathy, listening, observing, staying open to possibility, and most importantly, trusting ourselves to do what's right and what's best when needed. For me, that's what it means to be resilient as a leader, which, funny enough, this idea of resiliency is in fact bracing contradictions, because I grew up with a super different idea of what resilience was. So I come from the sport of swimming, which is traditional, rule-bound, very directive, top-down, hierarchical, very male-dominated. When I was 14, training in Calgary, a new coach moved to town. His name was Derek Snelling, and he had placed over 30 people on Olympic teams in his career. So when my mom and I drove over to meet him at the University of Calgary pool, he said it really bluntly: if your kid wants to go to the Olympics, then he better train with me. Well, we made the move. We decided to change swim clubs, and even though it meant driving an extra hour morning and night, we did it. Derek was very old school. He'd been a drill sergeant in the British Navy, and he doubled down on that command and control style of leadership. It was his way or the highway. One size fits all. It doesn't matter if you swim the 50-meter freestyle, which takes about 28 seconds when you're young, or the 1,500-meter freestyle, which takes over 20 minutes. We all did the same workout. Do as you're told, full stop. The whole point was to toughen us up. Resilience was about breaking down and pushing through. At 15, I swam a marathon, 26 miles, 42 kilometers, 1,680 lengths. Put in the hours, be tough. Because the tougher you were, the more resilient you were. And I have to say, for a long time that worked. It gave me a system to thrive in. I learned really important things: discipline, work ethic, being part of a team, respect for each other, pride in work, all of those kinds of things. At 16, I went to my first Olympic trials. It was for Los Angeles, 1984. I came 5th in the final, which was like amazing at 16 years old. I didn't make the team, but I made the national B team. At 18, I started the year ranked 49th in the world, and I ended the year ranked number 4. When I was 19, I moved up to 2nd in the world, and it's a year before the Seoul Olympics. Couldn't be better timing, and then disaster struck. So David Burkhoff, an American swimmer, one of my competitors, was studying marine biology. He studied the dolphin and learned about the dolphin kick. And the dolphin can kick faster underwater than any human could ever swim. And David took that same idea and thought, what if a human did the dolphin kick underwater? Maybe a human could kick faster than any other human could swim. And he was right. So he used to start in the water. So because people always assumed you would come up after the start and backstroke, there was nothing in the rule book that said you had to. So Jeff started, went 48 meters underwater dolphin kick, popped up, did a flip turn, went 48 meters underwater, popped up, hit the wall, and smashed the world record and started a trend. And as that Olympic year went by, my world ranking went from 2nd to 4th to 7th to 9th. Derek was so old school and so not technical and so not open to trying new things. And I was so incapable of doing it anyway. We just chose to ignore this innovation. And unfortunately, we paid the price. I went to the Olympics, I made the final, I was 7th in the morning. In the final that night, I was 5th. I was only one of 3 people that swam the 100-meter backstroke. The other 5 did the underwater dolphin kick. Of course, the International Federation did the right thing after the Olympics. Go sport leaders, yeah. So they changed the rule the day after the Seoul Olympics were finished. And so they added to the rule book that you had to come up off the start after 15 meters. So even though you could still swim a big chunk of the race 30 meters underwater, it gave backstrokers like me a little bit of a chance. So on that decision of what do I do? Do I keep going for 4 more years because that's the only chance you get with the games? I decided to go for it. And I slowly, over the next couple of years, found my footing again and started to move my way back up the world rankings. But my breakthrough really came about 18 months before the Olympics in Barcelona. I was at the World Championships in Perth, Australia, and in the morning, in my event, the 100-meter backstroke, I qualified in 2nd place for the final. So that meant if I could do the same thing 8 hours later, I'd break my curse of never winning an individual medal and finally get on that podium. The top qualifier and the sort of leader in our event was an American swimmer named Jeff Rouse. He was from Stanford University, 6'4", big guy. Not for a minute did I think that I could beat Jeff, but I thought if I can hold off the other 6 guys, then I'm going to get that medal I've always coveted so much. Backstroke's a funny race because you're literally going backwards, so you can't see the competition unless you're ahead of them. So Jeff is in lane 4, I was in lane 5, the best swimmer from Russia was in lane number 6. Didn't expect to see Jeff, but I knew I had to keep my eye on the rest of the field. The race started. I could see the Russian sort of down at my shoulder, which was great, just focused on him for the first 50 meters, did a flip turn, started to swim the second length, and with about 25 meters to go, as my right arm and hand came out of the water, I could feel that it was exactly even with the swimmer on this side, Jeff Rouse, the world record holder. I remember thinking, relax, relax, oh my God, you can win. So try not to freak out. Sort of stayed focused, hit the wall, and the first thing we do is look up to the scoreboard. And I find my name, Tewksbury, Mark, Canada, 55.29, and the number 2 and Canadian record. So I'm like, ooh, best time, Canadian record, silver, amazing. But who won this thing? I looked above my name and it said, Rouse, Jeff, USA, 55.23. And the number 1. So Jeff had outtouched me by 6/100ths of a second. You can't see that with the naked eye. It's less than a fingernail. And true story, a day earlier, you know when your nails just get a little long and they drive you nuts? I cut my nails. I was like, what was I thinking? Anyway. But if you looked really carefully, like it was such a breakthrough moment for me because Jeff was so stunned the race was so close because he had to watch me kind of catch him the whole race. And in the back, NBC filmed it and they focused on him and he was kind of hanging on the lane rope. In the back, you can see this hand flailing and hear this, whoa, whoa. That was me, the silver medal. I was like just loving it because 15 years into this thing, just over a year till the Olympics, I'm less than a fingernail behind the world record holder. This is like exactly where I want to be. Derek and I go back to training. Derek, in his usual way, wants to just keep doing what we're doing. He figures like we've figured it out. We're with the best in the world. Now we just have to tinker a little bit, but we're there, we've got it. And that's exactly what we did for the next 8 months. Went back and just continued that training we always did. Led me to my last rematch against Jeff before the Olympics would happen in Barcelona. So 10 months to go before the Olympics, Jeff and I have a rematch. And of all the pools in the world, Canada is hosting the Pan-Pacific Championships, and we're doing it in Edmonton at the Commonwealth Games pool. So it's close enough that all my friends and family in Alberta congregate in Edmonton. And it really is something to have like 1,000 people in the stands cheering you on. And there's an energy that's created by that. And so this is going to be my big breakthrough. I just couldn't wait for that race. In the morning, just like the World Championships, Jeff qualified in lane 4. I qualified in lane 5, second behind him. I thought the race would unfold in a similar way, that I'd probably be behind the first 70 meters, 75 meters, but with that crowd and that energy, look out. I was going to catch him and pass him and hopefully go into the Olympics ranked number 1 in the world. So the race starts. First 50 meters, I can't see Jeff at all, to be expected. Did a flip turn, and here I start to come. 60 meters, here I come, look out. 65 meters, 70 meters, no Jeff. 75 meters, 80 meters, no Jeff. 90 meters, 95 meters, the crowd is going bananas. What are they cheering for? I've got 2 strokes left. I hit the wall, and as my head came up from underwater, I just heard this pandemonium, just this wah, and I knew it wasn't for me. I looked to the scoreboard, Tewksbury, Mark, Canada, 55.29 and the number 2. Exactly the same time to 100th of a second that I swam at the Worlds. Amazing. Don't change a thing, get the same result. Woo, it really worked, all right. But above my name, it said Rouse Jeff USA, 53.93 seconds. Jeff dropped 1.2 seconds from the time that we had swam at the World Championships. This is what like 12-year-olds do, not 24-year-old world record holders. He had the kind of once-in-a-lifetime breakthrough that was unthinkable. He skipped 54 and went to 53. Right? Our sport is measured in hundreds of seconds. And in that minute, my dream was gone. It was over. I was just dumbfounded and wounded and couldn't believe what had happened. So where I had gone back, felt really comfortable, really proud of myself for my breakthrough, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Jeff saw how close his competitor was and went and reconfigured that race every which way he could to get that kind of breakthrough. Now we've got 10 months to go before the Olympics. It took me 7 years to drop 1.2 seconds from the time I was 16 to 23, if you added all the time up. Now there's 10 months. It's impossible. I have to say, I didn't know how I was going to do it or if it was possible, but I wanted it so badly. And I think that was the starting point. How badly do you want it? And how open are you willing to be? Because I had no idea how I was going to figure this out, but I was certainly open to the idea of figuring it out. But again, no idea how. You know, when Jeff opened the conference this morning, he talked about the importance of community. And I just can't stress how important that is as well. And this is where the magic happens, you know, of coming together in person. Because we're making new connections, and new connections are where innovation flourishes. We can talk about innovation all we want and what it looks like and the mechanics of it, but it's those moments in the coffee break, in the hallway, at the drinks tonight, at the reception tonight, where you run into somebody, you find a common interest, and suddenly there's an energy and a new connection is made, and maybe that leads to something that you could have never imagined before. In my case, this happened at a wedding reception. So 3 weeks after Jeff broke the world record, I was invited to an industry wedding in Calgary. A volleyball player was marrying a synchronized swimmer. And so about 400 of Calgary's sport people, very similar to a room this size, all gathered at this wedding. And I was really wounded. I didn't want to go. I was so humiliated by what had happened. I didn't know if other people knew. I didn't want to talk about it, all that kind of stuff. But I decided to go nonetheless, and thank goodness I did. At that dinner, I was seated beside a woman named Debbie Muir. Debbie was the synchronized swimmers' coach, Michelle Cameron's coach. Debbie was one of the most successful Canadian coaches to that point in our history. Her athletes won 7 out of 9 World Championship gold medals over 8 years in synchronized swimming, 2 Olympic silver and 2 Olympic gold. In my mind, on the pool deck, I was terrified of her. She was larger than life. She was so successful. I didn't know what I would ever say to her. But for whatever reason, in this moment, at this wedding beside her, when she said, "How are you?" like Allison said this morning, never waste an opportunity to share your story, I opened up. I said, "How am I? Haven't you heard? Jeff Prout broke the world record. I don't know, blah, 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 blah." And on I went. Honestly, it was about 20 minutes later, she said, "We're at a wedding. Maybe we could meet for lunch next week." And so we did. And it was the lunch that would change my life forever. because swimming up to 6 hours a day already, there's nowhere else to go. We've maxed out. But every single time, Debbie was a great question asker. And every time she asked a question, I would have to think about, gee, we've never done any work in that area. How long can you hold your breath underwater off the start? I don't know, we've never done that. How do you work your dolphin kick? I don't know, we've never done that. And for every time I could say we've never done that, I realized, okay, maybe that's a little area that I could start to work on and find some improvement. The lunch went 3.5 hours. It was amazing, I was so inspired. And I decided at the end of it to work up all of my courage. Debbie had retired from coaching. And I said, Debbie, would you consider coming out of retirement for this year to be one of my technical coaches? I would still train with Derek. That was my base. A lot of what Derek did was great still. It just wasn't going to be enough. I needed to do something else and more. Debbie was like, I can see how much you want this. I would love to be a part of it. And I said, before you agree, there's 3 caveats. First is, I have no money to pay you. I'm making $450 a month. Go, Canada, go. Woo, that's changed, thankfully. Second is, I have no time. Like, we're already swimming 4 to 6 hours a day. I have no idea how we're going to fit it in. And third, I said, I need to keep this like between us. Like, there's no way I can let Derek know, because like there's just no way Derek can know. And she's like, you don't have to pay me. We'll find the time, but there's no way I'm coaching you without your coach knowing. You got to go tell Derek. To this day, that remains one of the top 3 most difficult conversations I've ever had my whole life. Even when I said to Derek at the beginning of practice, I need to talk to you after workout, he was already like off. He was like, why? What's going on? When I told him that on the most important year of my career, that I wanted to get a new coach, that was a woman, that was a synchronized swimming coach. I saw his brain keep trying to catch, like he just couldn't quite get there. He was like, no way. Like, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. And we went back and forth for 48 minutes until I finally broke him. And he said, it's not gonna do you a damn bit of good, but I won't stop you. And Debbie and I got the green light to start working together. So as I said, I still had Derek as my main coach, but Debbie became the sort of ancillary coach that helped with my technical underwater stuff. But Debbie was more than that. She was an Olympic champion winning coach. She knew so many elements. So we started with the technical, that's for sure. Sorry, just real quick. It kind of broke my heart that Derek couldn't embrace the contradiction, that he couldn't in that moment see that with new information, this might be a way to go. But I think it's a really great lesson in leadership. What do we miss when we're not open to those opportunities? So the very first day at the pool, Debbie was a phenomenal planner. She figured out there were 311 days until my race at the Olympics, and she worked it back week by week by week till right here today, we're starting. This is day 1. And my very first exercise, she tied a tethered band around my waist and put 2 10-pound weights on it. Her athletes did it with 10 or 15 pounds. She put a little more because I was a guy. And they could dolphin kick off the bottom of the pool, the deep end, get to like their chest out of the water and stay there with their arms up for like 10 minutes. That was just what they did. They were such strong dolphin kickers. So she plunks me in. It's the deep end at the University of Calgary pool, so deep. There's a like 10 meter pool, so it's really, really deep. Her and the lifeguard are looking over as I'm on the bottom, and I close my eyes, and I just kick as hard as I can, and I'm kicking, and I'm running out of air, and I open my eyes, and I'm this far off the bottom of the pool. I have not actually moved, and I'm now like out of air, at the bottom of a pool, 20 pounds on my waist. I try not to panic. I'm like, get the tethered band off, get to the surface, do a grab the end of the pool, and Debbie takes just a moment, and she says, okay, you're even worse than I thought. It's true. She really did. She said, but this is a good thing. She said, I assumed you had a base that you don't have. So we're going to have to take 10 steps back to build that base, to sort of recorrect our course here. The worst thing I could have possibly heard. We already don't have enough time. And I said out loud, Debbie, I feel like such a failure. And she said, Mark, this year, there is no failure, only feedback. You got to trust me on this. We're going to try things. You're not going to be good at them right away. But it's going to give us information. And based on that information, we're going to take the next step. That's the only way there. I came from a sport, win or lose. It's against the clock. You're either better or you're not. There's no room for gray. It's extremes. Debbie taught me what Bex in the very first page of your workbook promotes, the idea of incremental improvement. I was always like, work, 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 bank it, see what happens at the end. This was a radical change in the way that I approached high-performance sport and that I've approached my life ever since. I can't say enough to that 1% commitment to be better because it accumulates and adds up over time. And it gives you room to make mistakes because you'll recalibrate. She called it the AER principle, act, evaluate, revise. Act, evaluate, revise. So for everything I'm going to have you do, we're going to take a step back. We're going to see if it worked or not. If it worked, we're going to keep going. And if it didn't, we'll recalibrate. So you got to trust me. We're building in a feedback cycle to what we're doing. I will never lead you astray. It was amazing. And indeed, the little tiny improvements started to happen. Debbie kind of took over the other side of my training. So Derek kept doing the traditional side, but Debbie, she looked at the bigger picture. She saw that I was weak technically, so we got that underway with the dolphin kick, but she also saw like I was a natural sprinter. I was the world's greatest 90-meter backstroker. Unfortunately, it's a 100-meter race. So those last 10 meters really sucked. And so she and I were like, gee, where would we find that expertise? And what she started to do was create what's called an IST around me, an integrated support team. We looked at all the different functions of what would be required to be the best in the world at what I did. And for every one of those functions, we tried to find the best person in the world. Many of them were right in our city, within our network. But some of them weren't, and the one for endurance wasn't. The one for endurance was a coach in Australia on the other side of the world. His name was Laurie Lawrence. And Laurie, he coached two athletes in the Olympics prior to 1992, so 84 and 88. In those days, the Michael Phelps of that era, for those of you old enough, you'll remember the name Matt Biondi. He was the US swimmer that was going to break Mark Spitz's 7 gold medals at the record, which was kind of the bar to reach. And each time at the Olympics, he won 6 gold and 1 silver because an unknown swimmer from Australia, from this random sport club, passed him on the last 15 or 20 meters of the race. So, and 2 different swimmers, 2 different events, 2 different Olympics, shared the same coach. So we looked up this swimming program. It was outside of Brisbane on the Gold Coast. They had no backstrokers, so no direct competition to me. We got in touch with the coach there, and he agreed. He said, if you want to come down and do a Christmas training camp while you're off school, I will be happy to share with you our secrets of what makes us great, but I'm not going to do it on the phone. You have to be here in person to discover it. So made the investment, went to Australia, and trained with Laurie Lawrence. And he taught us something called the heart rate set. So you can only do this set once every 6 or 8 weeks because it's so hard on your body. But you get your heart rate to 180 beats per minute, and then you keep it there for an hour. An hour! I've been like maybe 3 minutes of my life in that zone. I don't like it very much. And so It's old school. We did 40 times 100-meter backstroke on a minute 30 turnover. At the end, someone literally just grabs your throat, checks your pulse, makes sure it's like 180, and you stay there. And what happens is the lactic acid starts in your feet, and it just literally moves up your whole body till you can't feel your legs, you can't feel your ribs, you can't feel your arms anymore. The first time I did it, I made it to 23 minutes until I actually had to get out and throw up because my body didn't know what to do with all that lactic acid. But we brought that set back to Canada, and every 6 to 8 weeks I would do it. And in the 6 times that I did it before getting to the Olympics, I could start to make it to the hour. And boy, did my endurance ever start to change. As a leader, I think it's really important to understand what's going on with your people. And Debbie was so good at that. Even though I was second best in the world at what I did, I had a lot of doubt. I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of, I guess, didn't think that I could really ever beat Jeff. And because Debbie coached Olympic champions, she knew what a winning mindset sounds like. And I love both Allison and Jeff talked about mindset this morning. It's such a fundamental part of life and of leadership and of success. But Debbie could tell the way I talked about, Jeff's so big and he's so great and I've never beat him and all these things. I kept complaining about how slow things were taking. She could just tell my thinking wasn't in the right place. And she thought she would just kind of snap me out of it. One morning, when we were leaving training, she was just going to sort of throw a question at me and hopefully I'd see things and go, yeah, right. You're right, Debbie. Like, why not? So we were leaving the pool one morning and out of the blue, she says, hey, Mark, why can't you beat Jeff Rouse? And instead of going, oh yeah, why not? Within 20 seconds, all these things came out of my mouth. I didn't even know they were there. Because he's 6'4", because I'm Canadian, because I've never beaten him, because he's from Stanford, because I'm weak off the start, I'm weak off the turn, all these things. She was like, wow, that's why you can't beat Jeff Rouse. But we took all those things that I said, wrote them on a piece of paper, the stuff we couldn't control. Jeff is 6'4", get over it. You're Canadian, I just say you're Canadian because we'd never won that race, get over it. But look at you're weak off the start. Look at the actions we're taking to change that. You're weak off the turn, look at what we're doing. And through action, we started to get different results. And the results started to change my thinking, which opened me up to more possibility, which led to better results. And suddenly this negative thought cycle turned into a positive one. Debbie learned this the hard way. When she was first a coach, when she took on leadership role of the club in Calgary, the Synchronized Swimming Club, they went to nationals and they won every single event. In fact, in many of the events, they double podium. They got silver and gold. A year later, that same competition would be the World Championship Trials. So whatever club team won that would represent Canada internationally. Debbie, that whole year, after that first success, got a massive case of imposter syndrome. She just, for whatever reason, as a young leader, young coach, couldn't see the value that she brought to get those people to win. She thought it was a fluke, a first time. And so what did she do that year? She coached that team from a place of self-doubt and fear, and she projected all of her own onto that team. Nothing they did was good enough. They screwed up a practice, they'd come in extra in the middle of the day to do more. If you were sick and missed a workout, you'd double down and come in at she was horrible. She hated herself, the team hated her. They went to the World Championship Trials and they didn't even make the podium. She's in a judge sport, so she got to blame the judges at first. But eventually she had to take a really hard look at why did this happen? And she realized she projected her own fear and doubt onto that team. But it gave her the insight when she could see people going through that to help them get the tools to work out of it. So she gave me this really amazing tool that I use to this day. It's called the WAIT tool. Often when we're not getting the results we want, it can actually be ourselves holding us back without us even realizing it. Our own doubts, our own fears. WAIT stands for What Am I Thinking? And when you just stop and say, what am I thinking? It brings the unconscious thoughts up to the surface and helps you face what it is. This isn't about like always be positive and think positively. No, you're going to have doubts and it's great to acknowledge them, but don't let them sabotage your success. Be aware of them and do something about them. So as we started to take those actions, my thinking started to change, but then it really came a really tough moment for me. Authenticity is so important to be successful. If you can't bring yourself to work, how can you really ever do your best job at work? This was 1991, 1992. I'm in Alberta, I'm in sport, and I'm a deeply, deeply closeted gay person. I hate myself for being gay. I wish I could change it at that moment in my life. I would do anything not to be this. I didn't want this. I was born this way. If I could have chose something, I would have chose anything differently. Obviously, I don't feel that way now, but that was how I felt then. I was embarrassed to tell somebody that I was gay, horrified at the idea of my teammates finding out. I changed in the locker room with the wrestling team, the basketball team, the football team. It would just make my life unbearable. But I knew if I'm asking myself to drop 1.2 seconds off my personal best on one day when it counts the most, I can't have this inner fight anymore. I've got to somehow get this out. And the only way to do that was to share my secret. And the only person in my world that I could do that with was Debbie Muir. And so in February of 1992, just after my 24th birthday, I decided I needed to share this secret with Debbie. And Earl's had just opened. The Earl's chain came to Calgary on Stephen Avenue Mall. Woo! So we met there on a Saturday for lunch, and I had a glass of wine. It was like so decadent, but I was like so nervous, and my nervousness made Debbie nervous. And she said, "Mark, like, what do you have to tell me?" And I'd never said the words out loud. And I said, "Debbie, I'm gay." And Debbie, from years of synchro, where she goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and music's playing, she's not got the best ears. That's all I'm saying. I have the best hearing. And she goes, "Pardon?" I'm like, "Debbie, I'm gay." Honestly, true story. She said, "What?" I said, "I'm gay." Like, gay. She sort of recoiled for a second, teared up, and for just a minute, I thought, oh no, I've lost her. You know, we don't share things about ourselves that are vulnerable or we see as a weakness because why? We're afraid of rejection or losing what we have. And she just took a second to recover. And she went, "Oh, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you." She goes, "You've got my support 110%. Let's go win these Olympics." It's like, yeah, don't you love Debbie? Yeah. Thanks, Debbie. And she was so smart. So she took care of the technical, the underwater, the dolphin kick. She took care of the physical, the endurance. She took care of the mental, the winning mindset. She took care of, I'm going to say, the spiritual. I could show up wholly at work. And it made such a difference, one person knowing. When they, you know, the things that were said in the locker room in those days, people did not know better. There was no DEI training, my God. Aaron said, Doctor said, "Wow, we needed you back then." But no, there was nothing like that. But you know, to be able to talk to somebody and say, they're saying these things and they don't know it's me, and like it just kind of made it like it passed through me and not get stuck. But she also knew there's an emotional component, that it's really scary to have your whole life rest on one moment in time. She knew that I was going to swim on Thursday, July 30th. So 16 weeks out from the Olympics, she would show up at my training every Thursday. And Thursday was like one of my longest days. We would swim twice and do weights in the middle. So it was like 6 hours of training. And she would call it Fun Thursdays. We were going to go do something fun after workout. So the first week we went for a pasta dinner. It was expensive. I complained. I could have made it myself. What a waste of money. The second week we went to a movie. I fell asleep. What a waste of money. And I was kind of really negative about it all. But by week 4, I have to admit, when I saw Debbie at Trade, I was like, all right, we're going to do something fun. And 16 weeks later, when I woke up on Thursday, July 30th, somewhere deep inside, I was trained just to feel like this is going to be a great day. Something great is going to happen. In the morning, there were 65 men in the 100-meter backstroke. So we eliminate 57, and the top 8 come for the final. And you can never take the heats for granted. You've got to get in that final to win a medal. I was in the second last group of 8 swimmers called a heat. I was with the second best American. It was David Burkhoff, who'd kept swimming, the guy that invented the underwater dolphin kick. He learned how to swim the backstroke. Way to go, buddy. And so he was with me. We had a super close race. I just out-touched him at the wall, so I'm a personal best, was thrilled. But after my race, it was Jeff's turn. And it wasn't a question of if Jeff would win, it's how much he would win by. He's so far ahead of everybody else. So after Jeff's swim, the scoreboard cleared, and it said finalists, men's 100-meter backstroke. Top qualifier, Jeff Rouse, USA, 54.6. Second place, Tewksbury, Canada, 54.7. Third, David Burkhoff, USA, 54.8. Fourth, Martin Lopez-Ibero, Spain, 54.9. And then a drop. So top 4 was in 3/10. It's going to be close. They make you wait your whole life, and then you have to wait 8 more hours before the final. And I'll never forget, first of all, we had not won a medal yet. It was day 6 of the Barcelona Olympics. Canada is 0 medals. You know the press. The knives are out. And so even just as I'm kind of leaving the pool to go back to the Olympic Village, there's a massive Canadian media scrum that's all wants to talk now. And I see Laurie Lawrence, the Australian coach, kind of in the distance, and he looks at what's happening. And Laurie's a very enthusiastic, passionate kind of guy. And he's just out of sorts. And I can see he's pissed off. And then he grabs somebody's clipboard and he writes on it. And he goes like this so I can see it. And what he wrote was, "Go rest." What are you doing talking to the press right now? You feel like he didn't say all that. And I just shut that thing down. And I was like, yes, Laurie, you're so right. Go rest. It's amazing how our integrated support team can help us in ways we don't even know when we need it the most. In that 8 hours, you can't really do anything. You're physically as ready as you're going to be. You can't really sleep because you're too wired, but I just rested. And I did a lot of thinking. You're left with your thoughts. And I realized this is where I used to lose. Because in that time, I thought, there's 4 of us fighting for 3 medals. The first thing is I'm not going to be 4th. There's no way I'm making that podium. I thought about coming 3rd. Didn't feel right. I thought about coming 2nd, the best I'd ever been. It didn't feel right. I thought about winning. And I have to be honest, the thought of winning scared me so badly at first. I sat up in my little cot in the Olympic Village and said out loud, somebody has to win this race tonight. Why not me? And usually, because you're weak off the turn, because you're weak off the turn, all those things that are in my mind would have come. But because Debbie got those all out of the way, it was incredible. There was silence. I actually could not think of a single objection. Why not? And I said out loud again, somebody has to win this race tonight. Why not me? And it was I just felt so empowered. Went back, did my warm-up, and 30 minutes before the race, checked into the dreaded ready room. You hand over your accreditation, and from that point forward, the only people you see are your 7 other competitors and the officials. And you spend the last 30 minutes in a little room, 8 chairs, and your competitors. The Americans, God bless you guys, because there's 2, they talk. And David and Jeff are talking about everybody. Oh, Tewksbury didn't look that good. I'm like, really? I looked great. And I can hear you. So all this is going on, and there's the best in the world from Cuba and Germany and Japan, and we all trained thousands of hours. And I have to say, in that moment, I looked at these guys and I thought, what makes me different? And I was like, I'm the gay guy from Calgary. And if they had any idea how tough I am, they've got no idea. And I just felt this, what had been really a liability in my mind for so long, in the most important moment became my superpower, because somebody, my boss, created the environment for me to feel that way. That's why DEI, I think, is so important. The chief marshal came in and said, gentlemen, we're ready for the final. Please line up. And we started to line up. And as we did, there was this massive roar out in the stadium. And like so loud, we all kind of stopped what we were doing. And the chief marshal came back in and said, the king and queen of Spain have just arrived for the men's 100-meter backstroke final. Well, the Spanish guy went white. It was like, yes, one down. Where's the U.S. president? Come on. We lined up in single file. I was led out we marched out. I'm in lane 5. It takes a little while because of the protocol. My name's spelt right. They introduced me. The 28 Canadians, including my parents, were great. Nobody really cared. After me, it was Martin Lopez-Ubero, and 12,000 people roared. Lane 7 and 8. And then it's my favorite moment. We get to jump in the water for the start of the race and escape the noise of the crowd for the last time. And the pool's about 14 feet deep and freezing cold, but just standing on the bottom of the pool, just thinking, this is it, just relax. So I'm back to the wall, placed my hands on my feet, and waited for the start. Swimmers, take your marks. Did my start underwater, popped up. Already, Jeff and David, the 2 Americans, technically amazing, were ahead. I couldn't see them, but I could see Martin Lopez-Ubero was around my shoulder, the Spanish guy. Perfect. Just focused on that, the first length. Did a flip turn, swam the dolphin kick off the turn, popped up, and 2 things happened. The first was I could feel a splash at my head. I could see it. I was a body length behind Jeff Rouse. Not the best place to be, but at least I could see him. When he broke the world record, he was out of sight. Second thing is I gave myself 2 cue words. Go now. So go now, go now. And as I started to say that, I really started to go. And I saw Jeff's foot move from my head to my shoulder, to my chest, to my waist, to my thighs. And I was catching the world record holder. With 25 meters to go, the crowd was just going like, wow. I was supposed to say finish strong, but you got to be flexible and adaptable. I was like, keep going, keep going. Finally, I didn't see hand. I didn't see foot. I saw hand. With about 10 meters to go, it was about 3 inches ahead. 5 meters to go, we were exactly even like synchronized swimmers with 2 strokes left. And I just stroked, lunged and hit that wall and looked up to the scoreboard. And it took a moment, just a moment before the results came up because it was so close. And it was like having the worst asthma attack. I was like, waiting. And finally, I didn't see, all I remember is that my name blinked before any other name. And years of sport, I know what that meant. And I totally freaked out. We didn't used to win in the pool. I can't say that anymore. Okay. But I was like, wow! It ended up on the lane rope. And then it was like, oh my God, this isn't just a race. This is the Olympics. This is the dream. And I completely went into shock. Just kind of like, Jeff came over, really patted me on the back, more like slapped my face a little bit. The only person more shocked that I won was Jeff. Poor guy. He was just like, what? They finally kicked us out of the pool. Remember, my best time had been 55:29. Up on that scoreboard, it said Tewksbury, Mark, Canada, 53.98. I found the 1 point, almost 3 seconds. But here's the amazing thing. Second place, Jeff Rouse, 54.04, 6/100ths behind. And you know I had the longest nails in that pool, right? So, leading through change can be terrifying and exciting and everything in between. But I think where it starts is really being open, really, truly being open to find the best way forward, no matter what. Because what happens if we're not? So what do you think Swimming Canada did with their only gold medal since 1984 and the training that I did around it? Were they curious? Did they ask what Debbie and I did? Did they ever inquire? No. Because such is the power of the male and sometimes female ego. They couldn't bring themselves to understand what actually went on and what we did. They assumed they knew, like we assume we know things about people, like Jeff so beautifully said this morning in his presentation, but they never found out. In 2008, I did a documentary on Michael Phelps. It was called Miracle Body, and they showed different athletes why they're sort of physically meant to be excellent at what they do. There was Michael Phelps in the deep end diving tank part of the pool with a tethered band around his waist doing the dolphin kick. And I thought, look at that. When Michelle talked this morning at the opening about 7 generations, there's 2.5 generations that could have benefited from that knowledge and wisdom that I gained from Debbie. But because of closed-mindedness and ego, people weren't willing to go there. That's a pretty big price to pay, and we don't want to pay that. I'm not saying that being open is easy, because sometimes you don't know what the right thing to do in any given situation is because it's so fast-moving. And sometimes you might not even know what's next. You know, I was given one of the highest honors to represent our country in the Queen's funeral. I was one of 51 people from around the realms, 3 of us were Canadian, that were marching in that. I was given the Companion of the Order of Canada. I'm number 536 since 1967. Very, very rare thing to have. And yet, I felt so unfulfilled, so unjoyful traveling across the country and speaking, and I knew I had to do something different with my life, and I didn't know what, but I knew I had to change. So in January of 2023, feeling pretty low, I went to the Calgary Public Library, and random, but I just was like, I brought like a journal to write in, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna wander, and I wandered the library, and I ended up at the cookbook section. And I took out a book on cooking in a Mediterranean style. And I thought to myself, maybe I should listen to this. Maybe there's something here. My partner and I started to talk about making a life change. Maybe I'll go to Cordon Bleu in Europe in 2026 or something. And all of a sudden we learned SAIT, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, which is about a 12-minute LRT ride from my house, has one of the top 15 culinary arts programs in the world. And so February 12th, I went to an open house. Oh my God, all the kids kept going, do you know what you look like? And it wasn't me, it was Jim Carrey from Bruce Almighty. It's gonna be a long 4 years. But I learned about the apprentice program, that I could go to school 1 day a week. I have to get 1,560 practical hours to unlock the next year of school, and it's a 3-year program. And by February 14th, I was registered with the Alberta government, and I'm now a tradesperson. I had no idea what I was doing when I started, I have to say, or where it would lead. People would always say, it's amazing how many people tell me what I should do, right? Oh, you should open a restaurant. Oh, you should have a cooking show. Oh, you should write a cookbook. Oh, you should. And I didn't want any of that. I did have a juice bar in Toronto where I lost my first $268,000. So I don't need that again. Thank you very much. My goal was really to be a better home cook, to get the skills. I understood as an athlete what that meant. And it was also to get away from what I was doing. It was not to be a road warrior, to stay home, to be there finally for my niece and nephew's birthday and those things that really count. I'm now on the home stretch of year 2 of school. I've spent over 3,000 hours working in a commercial kitchen. It has been one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life, because not only did I not know how to cut something, once it was cut, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about to put it in. What's a Cambro or a hotel or a deli or any of these things? But we learn. And it's that 1% better every day that actually totally starts to add up. I can't believe, so I'm at school with like 19, 20-year-olds. None of them knew who I was. For most of the first year, I swore all the professors to secrecy. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I just became class dad, which I like. I can live with that. I shaved my beard at first, but I'm old. You guys know it. We're just going to go there. But what I couldn't have imagined is I now have a business idea. I actually think I'm going to turn this into a business in Calgary. I'm not going to tell you what yet. That's going to let me hopefully stay home. But I've got one more year to maybe figure this out. But it led somewhere I could have never imagined at the beginning. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Embrace contradictions. Never say never. You don't know where life is going to lead you. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you box yourself into one way of thinking, I guarantee it won't be success. The same tools that I talked about today. The weight tool. First 3 months I was put in baking at my commercial kitchen job. The 24-year-old single mom that was mentoring me, who did not sign up to teach a 55-year-old white guy how to bake, was like, "You're so slow." And oh my God, for like 2 months, I was like, "You're so slow, you're so slow, you're so slow." And then I was like, wait a minute, I know how to get out of this. That's the weight tool, right? Like, and I had to apply my own shit. AER, act, evaluate, revise. Stir, taste, adjust. Boom, feedback cycle, right? Makes every meal a little better. You always have to taste your food, just like you always have to evaluate your actions to make sure that it tastes good or is on the right track. My IST, I'm so excited about creating an integrated support team around me as I'm starting to fuel this business idea to find the expertise that I need. Some of these things, I love when Jeff said this morning, we're in an era where what we know may not be relevant in the near future. But the flip side of that is some of the things that we know are timeless and classic and will be important forever. I hope that you've taken some of those things from my talk today, and thank you so much for your time.